I was gonna rip his heart out, I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me. Lynx is a conqueror, no, I'm Alexander, he's no Alexander. I'm the best ever, there's never been anybody ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
Back to the Bout the Ropes podcast here on Keep It Real Boxing. I am your host, CypherBox, and let's get into it. Now, as always, before every podcast, I have to remind you, you saw it in the intro, if you are a fanboy or a fangirl of any particular fighter, where you get upset, by every little bit of criticism they receive, this is not the channel for you, okay? You need to turn back now. I'm telling you, because I will talk about your fighter. I talk about all fighters. I talk about all promoters and broadcasters. Okay, so if you're one of these new age fanboy types that support the promoter and your fighter, you don't like seeing criticism about your fighter, all that sort of stuff. That tribalism that we seem to be getting in boxing these days. That hardcore tribalism. This is not the page for you. This is not the channel for you. Turn back now. And of course, if you would like to see what I'm going to talk about today, then just have a look at the description of the video today. You'll have a list of all the topics that I'm going to touch on today. And as always, as just coming in, smash that like button. Yeah, hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, and share the content. So where do I want to start today? Well, let's start here. Right, recent news coming out, I don't know if it's rumors or BT's put it out. I think ESPN's put it out as well over on Instagram, and I've not heard anything official so far. But apparently, I think even Usyk's manager, I forget his name, I probably wouldn't be able to pronounce it anyway, but his manager's also kind of put a tweet out about it too. And basically, from what I understand, that this fight is going to happen on July 23rd, as you can see on the screen, and it's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Now, I've got a bit of a problem with this because over the last few weeks, I've kind of raised a few things, a few hypocrisies, in terms of the boxing world, but which kind of has to do with, the world politics at the moment, especially in Europe. And we know what I'm talking about, the conflict in Ukraine. Now, a few weeks ago, I spoke in depth about Vladimir Klitschko demanding the world ban Russian athletes from sports. Not allowing them to fight, not allowing them to perform in global sports. Okay, and he was asked a question by a reporter or interviewer, journalist, or whatever, a few weeks back, saying that did he believe that Dmitry Bivol should not be allowed to fight Canelo Alvarez on May 7th? And he said, yeah, he shouldn't be. He should not be allowed. They should not sanction it. And even the boxing, organizations were the WBC, WBA, etc. Were contemplating it. I've not heard anything from them since. But here's my take on this situation. And it's not going to take me long. This topic's not going to take long at all. But here's my take on it. How is it okay for Alexander Usyk to fight in a country like Saudi Arabia, which is currently and has been for the last few years bombing the hell out of Yemen? Yeah, killing and murdering, thousands upon thousands. I think the number's up to about 400,000 plus people in Yemen. It's the worst humanitarian crisis in the world at this moment in time. How is it okay for Alexander Usyk, a man who's fighting and defending his country of Ukraine against the Russian invasion, how is it okay for him to fight in a country that is pretty much doing the same thing in most people's eyes as Russia is with Ukraine, if that makes sense. The Saudis are literally bombing the hell out of Yemen right now, with the support of the US and the UK government in a Saudi-led coalition. The UK and the US are providing weapons to Saudi Arabia in order for them to continue this assault on the people of Yemen. How is that okay, but it's not okay for Dmitry Bivol to fight Canelo Alvarez on May 7th? Where is Vladimir Klitschko here? Where are all these sports athletes? Where is the boxing commission now? Are they going to allow, are they going to sanction this bout and allow it to take place in Saudi Arabia after everything they're doing to the people of Yemen? You can see it on the screen. The evidence is there. Obviously, I will link the description to that article in the video, in this video, okay, along with all other sources. But how is that okay? Now, I recently saw an interview on IFL TV with Gareth Davies, the sports journalist, right? You all know he is, long hair, glasses, etc. If you don't, well, again, I've linked that interview into the description of this video, of course. But I watched one of him, and the title turned and said that, something that it was disgusting, it wasn't right to have the fight in Saudi Arabia. And I thought, wow, maybe this is a video where Gareth is actually going to speak up about this, what you see on the screen right now. And I watched the video and I watched the interview, and the reason he felt it wasn't right to have the fight in Saudi Arabia was because he felt the fight should be in the UK. And the reason the fight should be in the UK was because he felt that because of the conflict that was going on in Ukraine, etc. and stuff like that, like having that fight with a British fighter and a Ukrainian in Saudi didn't make sense. It made more sense to have it in the UK where, Ukrainian fans could get to and British fans could get to, and some nonsense like that he was going on about. And I just sat there shocked that I thought, hold on, as a journalist, you're not going to touch on what you're seeing on my screen on the right hand side right now, about how Yemen are bombing the hell out of how Saudi Arabia are bombing the hell out of Yemen. And you're not going to say that's the reason why you believe that fight shouldn't take place in Saudi Arabia. I mean, the hypocrisy and the double standards is unbelievable. Ban this guy over here, this Russian over here. Do not allow him to fight Canelo Alvarez over here. But you know what? It's okay. Let's send Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua over to Saudi Arabia, the same Saudi Arabia that is currently bombing the hell out of Yemen and has caused the biggest, the largest, the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet at this moment in time. That's okay. That's fine. Don't worry about that. It's absolute hypocrisy. And it just shows, what? Anyone that's not calling this BS out, you're full of it. Yeah, you are full of shit. Don't come on my channel and start spitting off other nonsense. This is Ukraine and this and that. No. A conflict is a conflict. Innocent people are innocent people being harmed all over in any conflict. The same support and the same rules should apply to everyone. I said this a few weeks ago, that should we ban the US and the UK athletes, from competing worldwide then? Because the UK and the US are supporting Saudi Arabia with this. And the US are also bombing Somalia at the moment and many other countries at the moment. Just because it's not on the news doesn't mean it's not happening. If you do your own research and look into things, you will find it. Yeah? But I think this is disgusting. And if no one else is going to say it, I'm going to say it. And I think this is pure hypocrisy if this happens in Saudi Arabia. I'm telling you now, I totally disagree with this. This is not right. This is wrong. You should have the same rule of thumb for everyone. And some people aren't going to like what I say, but like I said, this is Keep It Real Boxing. I don't care what you think. I'm going to speak my mind, whether you like it or not. Yeah? No one's forcing you to tune into my channel. It's that simple. Stay away if you don't like hearing the truth. But I can't believe this is happening. And I think it's absolutely disgusting. And I think boxing fans need to be calling Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk out for this, in my personal opinion. Okay, so let's move on from that. Let's, now we've done the political part, let's talk boxing politics, okay, instead. All right. But here we go. We've got HANEY versus KAMBOSOS. It's been agreed. I believe the date, is it June 5th in Melbourne at the Marvel Studio? I believe it is. And look, we finally got this fight, but I thought it was quite funny how it all went about and how certain things that was coming out of KAMBOSOS' mouth. KAMBOSOS, man, I don't know, man. Like lately, he's showing me signs of Teofimo Lopez after he beat Lomachenko. I'm not saying it's going to be the same result, of course, as what we saw against KAMBOSOS versus Teofimo Lopez, and the build-up and the aftermath. I already criticised Teofimo Lopez a lot, the other week, so I don't want to touch on him too much because I want to focus on these two guys. But yeah, there's a little air of KAMBOSOS showing that, where he's got to his head a little bit, and he thinks he's Floyd Mayweather a little bit, and he's the A side, and he was, he also turned around and said, Devin Haney's the B side, and the B side, when you're the B side, you're told what you do as you're told. Well, Devin Haney, has gone all out, and you know what? Credit to Devin Haney, because Devin Haney has done exactly what he has needed to do to make this fight happen, to become undisputed. All right, and this is an example to all these boxers and all you fanboys out there, who support your fighters. This whole Errol Spence Jr. Thing that started, from Errol Spence Jr. You're on the wrong side of the street. Well, Devin Haney's turned around and said, well, you know what? I'm going to cross the street, and you know what? I'm going to sign with the opposite promoter and all that sort of stuff to make this fight happen. Okay, and you can see on the screen, this is what Devin Haney's basically saying. I just agreed to everything they wanted. If I've got to go on another network with another promoter, so be it. Got a rematch you in Australia, so be it. I just wanted the belts. I want my name to be in the history books forever. Shout out to Devin Haney. Now, from what I understand, it is a 3-fight deal that Devin Haney has signed up to when it comes to Top Rank and Bob Arum. He has signed up to have the first fight with KAMBOSOS. If KAMBOSOS loses, then it will be a rematch again in Australia against KAMBOSOS. Okay, if Devin wins. If Devin doesn't win and KAMBOSOS wins the first fight, then apparently there is no rematch. Thought that was a bit strange, but he agreed to it. He did what he had to do to make the fight, and shout out to him for that, because most fighters wouldn't agree to that. But not only that, if he beats KAMBOSOS in the second fight, in the rematch, should he win the first fight, then potentially he will get Lomachenko in that third fight. Now that's interesting, considering for the last few weeks I've been talking about boxing politics, and a lot of people turned around and said that Lomachenko took the franchise belt to duck Devin Haney. And I turned around and said, yeah, it was a duck, but it was a business duck, because Top Rank were not about to let their top stars on their promotional company fight, on DAZN or other promotional or broadcasting broadcasters like DAZN, yeah? They weren't going to allow that to happen. So that's why they pushed to make him the franchise champion. So in a sense, I don't think it was the fighter necessarily ducking Haney, or in this case, Loma ducking Haney. I felt it was Bob Arum saying, we can't allow that to happen because ESPN will not allow us to do that. Do you get what I mean? ESPN are not about to put all this money into Top Rank and Top Rank promotions and their boxers and then say, hey, it's okay, go fight on DAZN. Yeah, because at that time, Devin Haney was the mandatory challenger to Lomachenko's WBC belt. And if they lost that purse bid, that means to Eddie Hearn, which, as we know, DAZN are putting a lot of money behind certain fighters and certain situations. They would have got Lomachenko and they would have got him across to DAZN and said the fight's happening on DAZN. Bob Arum couldn't allow that to happen, so hence they pushed the WBC to make Lomachenko the WBC franchise champion. That way, you know, and then Devin Haney was promoted obviously to the status of WBC champion. And that way, you know, there's no risk of Lomachenko ending up on the zone. Funny that, because now that they've got this deal with Devin Haney done on Top Rank, they're saying that the third fight in his contract with Top Rank Promotions, if he beats KAMBOSOS in a rematch, could be Lomachenko. So I kind of feel like, you know, whatever I was saying was kind of on the right path. I was kind of on the right path, because it sounds like that's exactly what the problem was back then. I don't believe the fighters are afraid of each other. I think it's the promoters and the boxers and the broadcasters, not the boxers, sorry, but the promoters and the broadcasters that are the issue. The businessmen and women of the business people of the sport, when they get involved, that's when the problems occur. That's when fights don't get made, because they don't want to see their fighters fighting on the other platform, if that makes sense. And see, this is what happens when you take the emotion out of it and you use your brain. A lot of boxing fans can't, or shall I say fanboys especially, yeah, that's who I'm targeting here, right, can't take the emotion out of it, all right? And when you can't take the emotion out of it, you can't think straight. You don't think clearly, because you're thinking on emotion, right? That's not what I do here on this channel. I take the emotion out of it. I'm not tied to any of these fighters, these promoters, these broadcasters. So I feel like I see things a little bit clearly, yeah, than most other people who watch the sport or who commentate on the sport. And in my opinion, I was probably, you know what, was pretty much right. That the problem wasn't that Lomachenko didn't want to fight Haney, or Lomachenko was scared of Haney. It was the fact that Bob Arum just couldn't allow one of his top stars, you know, to end up fighting on the zone if they lost the purse bid. Because what was he going to do? Vacate the belts? That would have made him look even worse. So instead, they petitioned to have him become the WBC franchise champion. But now, look, a couple of years later, here we go. Haney's now signed up to Top Rank, and they basically said, if you beat KAMBOSOS twice, we might make your fight against your third fight against Lomachenko. Right, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, look, you know, Devin Haney has to beat KAMBOSOS twice in Melbourne, you know, in Australia first, before we can even talk about Haney versus Lomachenko. You know, Haney could get beat, for all we know, in that first fight, and you know, that's it. That's that dream gone. But listen, shout out to Devin Haney. Whatever he's doing, you know, right now, whatever he has had to do to make this happen, shout out to him, because I'm telling you now, there's not a lot of fighters out there that would have done it. Okay, so let's move on to some of the antics that KAMBOSOS was pulling in, you know, the run-up, you know, to both fighters, you know, signing the contract for this fight. Let's start with the whole fake signature thing. Yeah, this made me laugh. Like, what is this guy on? I don't know if he's playing head games or mind games or trying to get inside of Devin Haney's head. I don't know if that's going to really work with Devin Haney, but we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, I don't know whether it's head games. That's what I don't know. Or is it ego? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, but let's have a look at what he said. Yeah, and this bit made me laugh. I was in hysterics about this one.
Obviously, no major official announcement has come through yet, but we're imminent. It is very close. I'm waiting to see his contract firsthand. I want to see it properly, because he's the B-side, so you do as you're told, and we will make sure it looks all good. No fake signatures, and then we got to fight, no problem.
Oh my God! Listen, look, no fake signatures. You know, when you're the B-side, you do as you're told. No fake signatures. I want to look at his contract myself and all this sort of stuff. Like he's the businessman. Like, you're not Floyd Mayweather, man. And to be fair, Floyd Mayweather isn't really the businessman. Al Heyman's run his career all these years anyway. We know that. Tremendous fighter, but let's be real. And he still does now to this day. Al Heyman does control Floyd Mayweather's career. I hear he's coming back in May for an exhibition. Don't know what that's all about. But anyway, let's go back to this. You know, KAMBOSOS is acting like he's the big boss or something like that. You know, so part of me feels like it's ego, but you know, I don't know whether there's a little bit of mind games in there as well, trying to get inside at Devin Haney's head, like I'm the boss, you know, and you ain't. You know, you're beneath me, kind of thing. You're not important. No one knows you. I'm the big man around here, sort of thing. You know, it just felt like, I don't know whether it's ego or head games, or it could be a bit of both. You know, is he in that delusional state like Teofimo Lopez was? Who knows? We're gonna have to wait to see on fight night, of course. But you know, that wasn't, you know, there were many other things that he was doing and saying, and to try and get, you know, I feel like at times to try and get a reaction from Devin Haney, but to kind of get under his skin. But you know, Devin Haney did react to this. You know, there was a couple of tweets he put out, and here they are. So here's one guy saying, "Wait a minute, dude didn't sign on his proposal yet," and Devin Haney's like, "No." Then we got another tweet from this guy laughing my ass off. Dude was all on Australian TV talking about he need to check the contract and make sure the signature is not fake. He need to make sure everything is in writing, is as is. He talk as if you wrote the contract up, and Haney's like, you can't make this up. And this is Haney just getting a little bit of his own back, I think, on George Kambosos' TikTok. We're waiting for George. We're waiting, Georgie, because Kambosos was doing that a few weeks ago, saying TikTok, you know, sign the contract, accept the deal, etc., and all that sort of stuff. So, like I said, you know, I don't know if George Kambosos is his ego getting away with him, or he's just playing mind games, or he's trying to make people believe that his ego's getting away with him, like George Kambosos, or is it a case of both? Who knows? But like, those are some of the antics he was up to. And then obviously there was a press conference as well, you know, where I'm going to play you a little snippet, but there was a lot said. And, you know, George Kambosos was definitely trying to get under Devin Haney's skin. He was definitely trying to get into his head, live in his head rent free. But Haney gave it back as well. So he didn't really give him that. But he's definitely trying hard. There's no doubt about it.
He could say that he chose me, but that's not the truth. He was forced into this fight. He did not want to fight me. And up until today, he did not want to sign the contract up until today. So he can say what he want to say. He did not choose me. He was forced into it.
You were chosen, boy.
And,
you were chosen.
Can you repeat the question for me again?
Sorry,
no, I wasn't chosen.
You were chosen.
No, he was forced.
You got forced into this
position.
You didn't want this fight. I'll take the same deal as Loma does. I'll take the same deal as Loma. Yeah, you're on a different broadcast.
And what did I do?
You're on a different broadcast. You're on a different
broadcast. And what did I do?
That's right.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Because I knew I could beat you.
Show me June 5th.
I trusted my skills so much that I knew, no matter what, I'd fight you anywhere, wherever. I'd fight you in your backyard if I had to, because I know that I'm gonna beat you. And you'll see June 5th.
I'll be waiting.
June 5th, there we go. It was going so nicely there.
See, the little smirk at the end there kind of made me feel like, hey, George Kambosos felt like he got into Devin Haney's head there for a little bit, and he might have done a little bit there. But the point is, you know, at the very beginning when this all happened, I spoke about this a few weeks ago, and I showed you and I played you the clip as well, where these two guys were so respectful towards each other when they came face to face. Kambosos had just beaten Teofimo Lopez a few weeks ago, and he's now at, you know, he was on at Devin Haney's fight, and they bumped into each other, and they were so respectful of each other. And he said, and Devin Haney said, I would go to Jupiter to fight you. He goes, yeah, as long as it all makes sense, you know, absolutely. He's a really good fighter. You know, I've got these belts. He's got the WBC belt. Let's do this. They were so respectful of each other. And then it all turned once the businessmen got involved. You see what I mean? I said this a few weeks ago. But right there, I think Kambosos, like, even though Haney bit a little bit, I felt like Kambosos at the same time, you know, he didn't look very good there in that sense, what he was trying to say, because, you know, he's basically turning around and saying that, hey, you were forced into this position. Really? Because that's what it, you know, end of the day, yeah, you could say that Devin Haney was forced into the position, but Devin Haney lived up to his word. You know, he said, give me the same deal as Loma. Yeah, I'll come across, I'll fight on your broadcaster, I'll sign with Top Rank Promotions, Bob Arum. Yeah, I'll do a deal with them as well to make a fight with you, to make Undisputed happen. A man of his word, he lived up to it. Shout out to Devin Haney. You know, if the roles were reversed, I don't think George Kambosos would have done it, personally. So at the same time, even though he's trying to use that to get under Devin Haney's skin, and yeah, Devin did bite a little bit, I still feel like, to me, it just makes George Kambosos look like an idiot. Because what are you trying to get out? You told him he had to fight in Australia. He says, okay, I'll sign on the dotted line. I'll fight in Australia. Okay, you have to come across my side of the street with Lou DiBello and Top Rank and ESPN. Cool, done. You need to fight. You need to sign up to have a rematch with me if you beat me. But you can't have a rematch. Okay, sign, done. You know. So that's just going to make Devin more focused and more determined, in my opinion. He's that kind of fighter, in my opinion. But yeah, look, listen, I'm glad the fight's happening. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, if you definitely watch the whole press conference, you could see Kambosos was trying. It was quite funny because Kambosos came out when he got announced and he walked out to the stage. He did this weird thing where he stopped and he just looked at the camera, at the crowd, or out onto the crowd, even though there wasn't a crowd there, and kind of nodded his head like, yeah, I'm the man, I'm the boss. And it was I just thought it was weird. I thought it was funny at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. These are all attempts to just try and get inside of Devin Haney's head. Personally, I don't think it's working too well. I think there was a moment where, obviously Devin Haney bit, but then towards the end, Bill Haney and Devin Haney were laughing at Kambosos as well. So that was interesting to see, kind of like, hey, you're not getting to me, mate. Now, there's also this thing where Kambosos keeps referring to Devin Haney as pillow fists. Let's kind of squash that right now. When you look at Kambosos' record, which you can see on the screen right now, Kambosos has a knockout percentage of 50%. Okay, Haney has a knockout percentage of 55.56%, as you can see on the screen from his record, and he's had more fights than Kambosos. So yeah, I don't know if this whole pillow fist stuff is going to work on me. It might work on the ignorant boxing fans out there that don't like Devin Haney. And look, end of the day, when you don't like someone, you don't like someone. Same with people if the Haney fans, if they don't like Kambosos, if you don't like someone, no matter what they do, you're never going to like them. But I think you kind of need to drop the whole pillow fist stuff, because clearly, if there is a pillow fist fighter here, it's George Kambosos, and his record states that. I also saw this tweet, and it says this, and just like that, Devin Haney isn't the email champ. George Kambosos isn't the undisputed champion, but the franchise champion. I can only imagine the Devin Haney praising articles Mike Kopp and Dan Raphael going to write now. #boxing at TR Boxing. Okay, good point. Before he was the email champ and his belt didn't mean anything. And before it was, Kambosos is the undisputed champion. Teofimo Lopez was the undisputed champion. But now that this fight's happening, if you notice at the bottom of the screen when you go and watch their press conference, it says George Kambosos, WBO, IBF, and WBA champion. Right? That's it. That's all it says. I think he's got the ring belt as well. Throw that in there to it as well. It does not say undisputed champion. And they even say this is for the undisputed championship of the world. But before, Devin Haney wasn't, the WBC champion. He was the email champion. Yeah. And Lopez and now Kambosos were the undisputed champion. But now that, this fight is happening, suddenly this is the undisputed champion. And Kambosos is recognized as the unified champion, while as Devin Haney is recognized as the WBC champion. See how the narratives flip. Now that Haney's signed with Top Rank, oh God, no, yeah, he's the WBC champion now. And Kambosos is the unified champion. And this is for the undisputed championship of the world. But of course, you ignorant, fanboy types out there, you don't see that. You're manipulated by your favorite boxing channels who push your narratives for your favorite fighters. You're manipulated by the promoters and the managers who push the nonsense, and the broadcasters who push the nonsense. But then, when situations like this occur, suddenly, all the things we said before, we never said that before. I never said Devin Haney wasn't the WBC champion. I never said George Kambosos was the undisputed champion. But now suddenly, he's respected as a WBC champion, and now obviously Kambosos isn't the undisputed champion. I mean, come on, like seriously, you guys out there need to let go of the emotions. Yeah, just support the sport like I do. Yeah, you'll enjoy it better, and then you'll be able to see all the bullshit that goes on in the sport as well better. So let's move on to this now. Yeah, there was a massive uproar about this recently, that Tyson Fury had brought in Jaron Miller into his training camp as a sparring partner to prepare for Dillian Whyte on April 23rd. Now, I saw an interview, and there's a lot of people commenting on Twitter as well. Two PED cheats with each other, and they're right. They're both PED cheats. Tyson Fury, I believe it was in the run-up to the Christian Hammer fight, which then led on to Klitschko, etc. And Jaron Miller, we all know about Jaron Miller, tested positive for Anthony Joshua, and then tested positive again after he came back from a ban, with, before he even got into the ring with, a fight he was going to have with on Top Rank. last week, I think it was, or the week before, it was announced that, you know, his suspension was going to be lifted, but he had to continue VADA testing, you know, and show that he was a clean fighter. So Tyson Fury's bought him in. I think it's a good choice for a sparring partner, you know, that big, you know, a big guy, you know, who can move quite quickly. Whether he can still move quickly without the PEDs is another matter altogether, but has that endurance to keep going and give you a tough run of it and put you under pressure. So a lot of criticism, and I heard Adam Smith of Sky Sports on a interview, I think it was with IFL, links in the description if you want to go and watch that interview, and he completely slated Jaron Miller. And I think a lot of animosity and bad feelings that Adam Smith, Eddie Hearn and Sky, etc. have towards Jaron Miller is because it was going to be a big fight. There was a big build up. They were going to put a lot of money behind it, and they feel they got let down by Jaron Miller, and they did. You know, he's a cheat. He's a PED cheat, no doubt about it. And I think he was going on like, you know, Jaron Miller, like he should be banned for life from the sport and all this sort of stuff, and you know, he shouldn't be allowed, this is disgusting, and you know, it's not right, etc. and all that sort of stuff. However, I never once seen Adam Smith come out publicly and say the same thing about Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte tested positive many years ago, and he was banned for 2 years for it. He then tested positive when it came to an Oscar Rivas fight, and that was on Sky Sports Boxing, and he was under their banner. And of course, you know, they protected him. And I felt there's a bit of corruption there. You know, the guy that clearly tested positive, there was no report on the B sample and all that sort of stuff. You know, Dillian Whyte himself is a dirty fighter. He's a PED cheat as well. So why didn't you have the same energy when it comes to Dillian Whyte? You know, again, blatant hypocrisy, double standards here in boxing. See what I mean? He doesn't want to upset Dillian Whyte because one day he hopes maybe he can get Dillian Whyte back to fight on Sky Sports. So let's not upset him. But at the same time, we've seen Adam Smith shake Tyson Fury's hands in interviews. Yeah, when he's having an interview and Tyson Fury comes along, he goes, "How you doing, mate? Yeah, you're all right, mate. How you doing?" And they're the best of friends. I don't see him having the same stance with Tyson Fury. But when it comes to Jaron Miller, oh my God, he should be banned for life. And it's disgusting that he's being allowed to even spar Tyson Fury, let alone being allowed back into the ring. And listen, stop it. Yeah, stop the nonsense. Listen, I call out every single drug cheat in this sport. I have done. Go over my channel. CANELO, Jaron Miller, Dillian Whyte, Billy Joe Saunders, Tyson Fury. I've talked about everyone. Yeah, anyone who pops dirty, I go in after them. Yeah, I don't let them go. I'm not like other channels, you know, trying to, you know, rationalize and make excuses for their favorite fighters. I call them out. Yeah, but this guy Adam Smith, right? This guy Adam Smith has chosen to pick on Jaron Miller and say Jaron Miller is a dirty fighter, he's a crook, and he shouldn't be allowed back into the sport. Meanwhile, I've seen Adam Smith shaking the hands of Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury and being bum chums with them, but then when it comes to Jaron Miller, he wants to shoot him down and say, hey, get him out of the sport, he doesn't belong in it, he's disgusting, get rid of him, don't give him another chance. And some people might say, well, he's failed 2 drug tests or 3 drug tests, blah blah blah. Well, Dillian Whyte failed 2 drug tests, Tyson Fury failed 1 drug test. Who cares? A failed test, it doesn't matter if you failed 10 tests or you failed 1 test. You are a cheat, you don't belong in the sport, right? The same energy should be for any fighter. Yeah, even Oscar Valdez recently with his peppermint tea or whatever it is. Yeah, you have the same rule and the same energy towards all these PED cheats. Not just because, oh, well, they're all right because they're British and, you know, it was all a misunderstanding. And, you know, Fury, you know, we won't talk about Fury because he's the biggest heavyweight and the #1 heavyweight in the world. And, you know, one day, you know, we want him on Sky Sports. And, you know, oh, Dillian, you know, don't upset Dillian because, you know, we want to keep our relationship good with Dillian because, you know, maybe we can get him back on Sky Sports. But Jaron Miller, get rid of him. Get him out of the sport. He cost us a lot of money, you know, for the AJ fight. It's disgusting. Get rid of him. You're like, come on, give me a break. Yeah, stop the nonsense, guys. Now let's move on from that. Let's talk about, you know, Frank Warren, Dillian Whyte's lawyer. You know, I talked about this last week where they were both on TalkSport. I played you the audio and kind of broke it down and gave you my opinion on it all. And, you know, TalkSport kind of touched on it again this time, and they absolutely slammed Dillian Whyte's lawyer. And here's the audio. Links in the description, guys.
I think Frank was fairly relaxed. I think, as far as he's concerned, he's got the right to stage this fight. This fight has been sold out. Of course, he wants it to do huge numbers when it comes to a pay-per-view point of view, and that's why I think he wants Dillian to speak, to try and sell the fight, to try and boost the amount of money that he can earn from this fight. I think this squabble that's going on, as frustrating as it is to listen to it, as great as it is to bring it to the listeners on TalkSport, I think the fight will definitely go ahead. But the squabbling that's going on is a side plot I don't think we need, because the fight sells itself. It's a brilliant fight. It's a chance for Dillian Whyte to get what he's always wanted, which is a world title fight. He's fighting at Wembley Stadium, potentially 100,000 fans there as well. So hopefully they can put their differences to one side, and hopefully we get to speak to Dillian Whyte in Fight Week at the very least.
I'm sure we will. Simon, what we know is that you and I were in the thick of that on Friday when Benz and Frank were going at each other. It was a hell of an exchange.
Sure.
And Frank still sounds pretty angry.
Yeah, I mean, I also think Frank's a crafty old operator. He'll know that any publicity that's generated is good for him and good for the amount of people that want to watch the fight, irrespective of whether it's with the alternate camp in terms of the promoter for Dillian Whyte. I think universally, if you talk about the boxing world, and I have done over the last 2 or 3 days, I think we said it at the time. I said to you, when we get this guy back on after his ridiculous allegations, because I said to him before we went to the break, the problem for me is when you get a lawyer involved, you always end up in court, and here you are, you're a lawyer, and there's a problem. Whatever Dillian Whyte didn't get in his contract, whatever the problems they were, should have been negotiated in the bout agreement.
Yes, yeah.
They should have been done. They shouldn't have been signed. So this guy shooting for the moon and making ridiculous observations, I said to Jim in the break, the first thing he'll do is he'll antagonise Frank Warren. He'll say something incredibly condescending or incredibly provocative, and what he tried to do was diminish, because there's a history that people have a perception that Frank doesn't pay his bills or fighters don't get paid, so he went straight for, we want the money in escrow because you can't be trusted, and we've done a credit check on your business and it doesn't stand up, because he wanted to get into Frank. The bottom line is that Frank is right. What, you know, they've paid more for this fight than anybody else was prepared to pay for it. So if Dillian is getting a percentage of a bigger pot, so he might have been in a similar position if they'd gone with Matchroom, right? He might have got a bigger percentage of a smaller pot, so he might have been in the net position. I'm hearing that this ridiculous argument about using his image, right? It is usual to use your image, and of course it's usual to ask people which image do you want them to use. But I understand now they're telling ESPN that they can't use Dillian Whyte's image to promote this fight. This is Disney. How did Dillian think he's going to get on in the world with big companies like that when you've got an idiot promoter like this guy potentially jeopardising his reputation? And Dillian needs to understand that this guy works for him. I'm not suggesting Frank's perfect, but I'm looking at this and go, it was an unseemly squabble. It resulted down to, in the end, about tickets and private. That should have all been negotiated in the contract.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done, you were very lucky that we gave you a mouthpiece on the radio, because clearly you haven't got one when you're negotiating a deal, because you're a bit of a buffoon, really.
So, James, when can we hear more of this from Frank?
Well, the first part of this interview will go out today at 5 p.m. on the TalkSport Boxing YouTube channel. So it's a 3-part interview. We speak to Frank about his relationship with Tyson from the very beginning, from their very first meeting, to helping Tyson emerge from the rubble that he was, and the situation he was in 2016 with the drug problems, with the mental health struggles he had, and how he rebuilt Tyson Fury, and how Tyson Fury rebuilt himself, and the incredible trilogy we saw with Deontay Wilder, and what has led us to this point. So there's plenty more fireworks in the interview as well, but I think it's fascinating. Frank telling us, I'm not dealing with Jeffrey Benz. The last person in the world he wants to try to bully is me.
James, just going back to Dillian Whyte, and obviously his manager Jeffrey Benz has not negotiated properly the contract, the bout contract. Just going back to Dillian Whyte, as an athlete, you control the controllables. Is he not missing an opportunity by not selling himself to the US audience, by doing these social media, by letting them see his personality and how hard he's working? Because whether he wins his fight or loses his fight, that is the future, and that's where there's a massive audience. Is he not missing an opportunity of selling himself?
I think you're completely right, Trevor. I understand Dillian's frustration. I think it comes from a principle point of view. He thinks he should be earning a bigger split. Thinks he should be earning more than this 80-20 split. However, when you consider the amount of money he's earning. Now, Tyson Fury said he's earning 32 times what Dillian Whyte's ever earned before in terms of what Dillian's going to earn. I don't think that's quite the case. I think he has earned slightly more for some of his fights.
But he's bound to say that. He's getting under his skin even saying that.
But the issue is, we should be hearing from Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte, the journey he's been on, when you consider his background, his upbringing, it's been an incredible journey to put himself in a position where he can fight for a world title. I think he's missing the opportunity to be on the centre stage, to conduct these interviews, to showcase his personality, because I've spent a lot of time with Dillian. He's a really infectious character.
Guy.
He's a really interesting character.
Yeah.
He's missing a trick. I think maybe he's being misled. But one thing that is clear is he needs to turn up for that weigh-in. We'll be there, won't we, for the White and Jordan show for the weigh-in.
Yep.
He needs to turn up for that, or there'll be no fight.
Yeah,
he will.
From what I understand, he will actually, all the fight week obligations he has.
James, listen, thanks for this. Simon, in a word or a couple of words, percentage chance of White winning it?
Same as his purse split.
20%.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. James, thank you very much. James Savunda with us here in studio this morning. It's 11:45.
So here's my point. Here's my take on this whole thing, right? Okay, and there might be a bit of an element of bias here. Some people might say, hey, these guys are just kissing the backsides of Frank Warren and Tyson Fury and stuff like that. I get it, but one, go and listen to what Dillian Whyte's lawyer said. He openly admit that none of the things that they're demanding for right now were written in the contract. And if you're not happy with the contract, you don't sign the contract. The reason they signed the contract was, whoa, Dillian, okay? And here's my take on it. Before I go on, but everything they said there, TalkSport, I agree with, because these are things that I've been saying over the last few weeks, all right? First of all, you're taking on Disney, yeah? Disney owns ESPN, which means ESPN has got a lot of money put behind them. And you're not going to allow Dillian Whyte's image to be used to promote the fight in America. Two, this is another thing I said a few weeks ago. Dillian Whyte isn't a bigger picture guy. He's not a businessman. He tries to act like he's a businessman. All these fighters do. All these fighters on the face of the planet all try to act like they're big businessmen. They're not. They haven't got a clue. They are fighters. And any business moves they make or any investments they make, they seek advice from other businessmen, from real businessmen and women. Okay? They haven't got a Scooby what they're doing when it comes to their money. All they know is that I want to make my money long. I don't want to end up broke like other fighters of the past. All right? And Dillian Whyte is not the most intelligent person on the planet when it comes to business. Right? And I go back to the Anthony Joshua offer that was made. Yeah, Anthony Joshua offered him something like £5.5 million, which would have been Dillian Whyte's biggest payday at that time, to fight him at Wembley for all his titles. He turned it down. Okay, not only because he turned it down because he felt he was worth more money, but he also turned it down because of the rematch clause. And then in the rematch clause, of course, the A side is Anthony Joshua, and in the negotiations, his A side power, you want to say, is that, hey, I'll give you a fight now, and the first fight I'll give you this much money, which was £5.5 million, and in the rematch we'll split it 50-50 even. Yeah, because even if AJ lost that first fight to Dillian Whyte, yeah, or their second fight, should I say, AJ's still going to be the A side. He's still going to be the more popular, more well-known name, right? Let's be honest. Okay, and that 50% will be even bigger in the rematch. So you're going to make even twice, maybe 3 times more money than you did in the first fight from that 5.5 million. And then if you beat AJ in the rematch, okay, you're the king. You call the shots. You've broadcasted your rival at a global stage, even in America and the US. No matter what British boxing fans want to say, with their ignorance, the US, yeah, is the biggest boxing market in the world. The biggest. Whether you like to admit it or not as a Brit, stop the nonsense. As I always say, let's keep it real. Yeah? And again, Dillian Whyte is in this situation, yeah, doing exactly the same thing, right? You're trying to take on Disney on a legal battle, which you're not going to win because they've got so much money behind them and they've got all these top-notch lawyers. You're going to lose that. Your lawyer seems incompetent, first of all, anyway, so you're definitely going to probably lose that battle if that went to court, right? But I agree with what they're saying, that you're missing an opportunity to sell yourself to the US public. No one in America knows who Dillian Whyte is. Only the hardcore fan, and the hardcore fans make up maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe 5% of all the boxing fans that are out there. The rest are all casual boxing fans, ignorant boxing fans, fanboys. fangirls. So you're missing an opportunity there. Totally agree with it. You're not thinking, you're not thinking 2 or 3 years down the line. You're thinking about right now. So you're not a very smart businessman, and your lawyer's an idiot. Yeah, he made you sign a contract that you weren't happy with. They tried to hold Frank Warren and Bob Arum hostage. Yeah, saying we're not going to sign if you don't agree to these terms. And Frank was fine. Don't sign it. You're getting your biggest payday. Either sign it or don't. And if you don't sign it, then obviously the WBC will pull you out of the position and offer it to someone else. End off. You lose your shot. Bye bye. And then it went right down to the last final hour or the last minute, and an hour before the deadline they signed the contract without any of the stuff that they wanted in the contract. Why? Because, oh, Dillian, look, they're not going to give in to us. You better sign this as well. You're going to lose all this money. Okay, don't worry, we'll spin it. Now, this could be the case. His lawyer says, oh, no, we'll spin it. Frank has a bad reputation. And I'm not saying Frank Warren's a saint. Of course he's not a saint. Yeah, no promoter is. Neither is Eddie Hearn, right? Okay, but here's my take on it, right? They're trying to, his lawyer's trying to turn around and say, hey, we'll spin it. We'll make it out like Frank promised us this and they promised us that and they promised us further negotiations and blah, 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 blah. Even if they did promise you all that stuff and it was real, you're still an idiot because you signed the contract. Now, legally in that contract, none of that stuff's there. So they don't have to do anything for you. They don't have to give you nothing extra. You get what's in the contract. And your lawyer, your incompetent lawyer, made you sign that. You tried to play a game and it backfired on you. Okay, the contract says that you have to promote the fight reasonably over social media. That's what Frank Warren said in that debate. He didn't mention anything about press conferences. Maybe there was more about press conferences. Who knows? And Frank, didn't touch on that part, or he didn't explain that clause properly. But Frank says he's going to take him to court after the fight's done for it. So, look, end of the day, here's my take on it. Dillian Whyte thinks he's a businessman. He's not. He hired an incompetent lawyer, and now that lawyer is crying, and so is Dillian Whyte, crying murder, right? When actually they signed a contract that didn't state any of the demands that they wanted in the contract. End of. You're legally bound now to that contract. You need to fulfill it. It's that simple. I see other YouTube channels, trying to ignore those facts. Those are the facts. They both were on air and they both said that. Simple. The only thing I might get Frank Warren on is that where Frank Warren might have shown a bit of incompetence as well. If it is the case that the contract only states that, he has to reasonably promote the fight over his social media accounts, yeah, okay, then Dillian hasn't done that. But at the same time, he didn't mention anything about Dillian having to turn up to press conferences to promote the fight, which he didn't do. But I think Dillian Whyte has become, in my opinion, there's loads of divas in boxing. And I feel like Dillian Whyte's the biggest diva in boxing. Why wouldn't you want to use the opportunity to grow your brand, especially out in the States on a platform like ESPN? Like, no one knows who you are. Dillian fought once years ago on a HBO undercard. Yeah. And the only reason it was shown here in the UK because obviously he's a UK fighter, but in America they didn't even show that fight on the undercard. They didn't televise it. So no one really knows who Dillian Whyte is out in America. I hope it makes sense to me, because it doesn't make sense to me, the behaviour. That's the way I see it anyway. But anyway, look, end of the day, we're going to get the fight. That's what matters. It's going down April 23rd. I believe they've now sold, they had the capacity increased to, was it 95,000, 94,000, 96,000, something like that. And apparently they've sold out on that as well. So it's the biggest sellout boxing match on record at Wembley Stadium. And that's another thing. I think a lot of people were hoping it would flop, that people wouldn't buy the tickets. I don't understand this mentality. I've never ever turned around and said, right, as critical as I am of Anthony Joshua, for example, yeah, I've never ever wished that Anthony Joshua doesn't sell out Wembley Stadium, that he doesn't do massive pay-per-view numbers. I've never been like that. Like, I don't understand that mentality. It's strange. Oh, we want to hurt the sport, so guess what? As boxing fans, we want to see this fight fail. Well, you're not boxing fans then, are you? You're fanboys. You're not real boxing fans. You're fake. Straight up. Keeping it real with you, man. I'm just keeping it 100. Okay, so let's move on from that. Let's talk about Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant the other week, and the link is in the description of this video, of course, guys. As always, yeah, did an interview on the Boxing Voice, and I've taken a little chunk of it where he talks about BENAVIDEZ, CANELO, CHARLO, etc., and stuff like that. And I'm kind of just like gonna break it down for you. But he said that now he's willing to fight BENAVIDEZ and CHARLO because that's what CANELO has said. Because CANELO has said that if you guys want a shot against me, I'm busy this year. We all know CANELO has put this out there. I'm busy this year. Triple G won last night, so if CANELO beats Bivol, we know we're going to see Triple G in September or whatever, right? And apparently they're going to make a UK fight with John Ryder in December as well. So he's fully booked this year. You ain't going to get no CANELO this year. Any of you guys, yeah? Any of those three names that I just mentioned are not going to get CANELO this year. Okay. He made some interesting points, but there was also some points in there that I dug out and I thought, this is not making a whole lot of sense right now. Why did he do it that way? All right. You'll understand what I mean as I break down the interview. But he basically said that he's willing to fight CHARLO and BENAVIDEZ if he wants his rematch against Canelo Alvarez. That's what Canelo says I have to do. I'm going to do it. I mean, end of the day, he doesn't have a title anymore. And at the same time, you know, that means he's got nothing for Canelo. He's got nothing to offer Canelo. And Canelo knocked him out. Let's not forget that. So, yeah. Let's go on to the interview and see what he had to say, yeah?
But you had some energy for Jermall Charlo, and you basically went to social media and said you were going to be direct, and you wanted that fight, I believe, for September, right?
Yeah, I didn't put no date on it. You know, I'm just letting him know. I felt like he kept making little comments like, oh, I don't know about that fight with whoever, or, you know, and then, you know, say like another indirect comment. And it's like, if you got something to say, you should just say it to me, because all the indirect comments, you know, that's silly to me. So let me just go ahead and lay it on out there for you. Me and you can fight, and, you know, if you ask me, that's easy work. So
were you surprised to see his selection of opponent, especially when there was a back and forth with you and he on social media? Then he and BENAVIDEZ had a lot of back and forth. Plus he posted, I'm the biggest super middleweight in the world, and all of a sudden now he's defending at 160 versus Selecki.
I don't know. You know, I'm focused on what I got going on this side, and you know, both of those fights, the BENAVIDEZ fight, the CHARLO fight, you know, those are both big fights that I want, and I want my rematch with Canelo. And if he says that we need to get to fighting each other, which I had planned on doing anyways, but, you know, if I need to beat every other top super middleweight in the division to get my rematch, then that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not getting the biggest fights when I just lost. You know, I'm not no crybaby. So if that means that I gotta work my way back, then I'm a man and I'm gonna do that.
Do you feel that BENAVIDEZ fight would ever happen because you guys kind of have the same manager in Louis DeCubas?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fight that I want. That's a fight that I've been wanting. And, you know, I know that there's been like speculation that him and his team sent me and my team, you know, some type of negotiation, but it's like, we got the same manager, Louis DeCubas, and we got the same advisor, Al Heyman. And he's also got a good promoter with Samson. And it's like, if he has those three great people in his corner who are able to negotiate for him and make big fights for him, then what makes y'all think that it's Jose Sr. who's calling the shots on that team? Oh, well, me and David, we sent him. You didn't send no offer, because you ain't making no offers. You're his coach. He's got three great people, some of the best in boxing, on his team to do that. And as far as the fight with Lemieux goes, he's had that fight signed since a month after me and Canelo's fight. And what type of fight is that? Him and Lemieux. What fight is it? Do you know what type of fight that is?
Not one that I was asking for, I'd say that.
It's a title
eliminator.
It's a what?
For WBC. Eliminator.
So if he wins, then what does that mean?
Well, technically he would be next in line for whoever's the WBC champion at 68.
And who's that?
As of right now, Canelo Alvarez.
Okay, so if he wins this fight and then he can get that opportunity, which he's been crying for, then why would we be fighting next? You get what I'm saying?
Because he may not get it.
Well, if he don't, then let's make it happen. But as of now, his plan is to fight Canelo next, hopefully, if he can make that happen. So why would he be sending me offers and negotiations? Why wouldn't he see if he can make that work first? And if it don't work, then he send me something, right? So there was no offer. There was no negotiation. Me and Louis DeCubas got on the phone and talked about it. He's like, these dudes are lying. So, you know, I don't know what to say, but that's a fight that I want to make happen. And like I said, if I got to do a fight or two to get back up there, then that's what I'm going to do. And but if I can get that fight ASAP, then that's what I want to do as well.
Now, I've got a little bit of criticism for Nesta Gibbs, because Nesta Gibbs puts out a lot of criticism in the past, especially of Kugan Cassidy on IFL TV, about not pushing the envelope, pushing the right question, giving the hard questions. Now, Ness usually does put the tough questions on fighters and promoters, and that's why a lot of fighter promoters don't end up going back on his show, because he puts them under pressure, right? And then they're like, oh, cut him off. No, we're not going to go back to that. But look, as you can see on the screen right now, I've got Caleb Plant's record. Okay, that's what I've got on the screen right now. All right, I've got part of his record. All right, his box rec. All right, and now as you can see Jose Uzcategui is the guy he beat for the IBF belt. All right, his next fight after that was Mike Lee. His next fight was against Vincent whatever, and he fought Caleb Truax, and then he fought Canelo Alvarez. Now, in between Uzcategui and Canelo Alvarez, he fought 3, no disrespect to those fighters, 3 nobodies. Caleb Truax, yeah, we know him, but he's more of a journeyman, step up sort of stepping stone type of fighter. But when we look at those 3 fights, yeah, in between Uzcategui and Canelo Alvarez, why didn't he fight David Benavidez? Why didn't he fight Jamal Charlo? Now, maybe he couldn't make the Jamal Charlo fight, because Jamal Charlo, as much as he likes to say lions only, it's more like cubs only, in my opinion, because we've seen him do that against Daniel Jacobs, and then when Daniel Jacobs rolled up on him and got in his face, he went from being a lion to a little cub. All right, so I don't take Jamal serious when he barks. Yeah, basically his bark's louder than his bite, in my opinion. All right, he talks a good game, but you know, he never lives up to it, in my personal opinion. Okay, but why didn't he fight David Benavidez in one of those fights? Instead of fighting one of those 3 guys, why not fight David Benavidez? You just became champion and you went and fought a guy like Mike Lee. Why couldn't that be David Benavidez? Why couldn't the next fight against Vincent whatever be David Benavidez? Why couldn't the fight before Caleb Truax be David Benavidez? That's my opinion. You know, now he's got no title. He wants to fight those guys so he can get back into the ring with Canelo Alvarez. Now he's been told, that's what you got to do if you want a shot against me again. Oh, okay, Canelo, I'll do it. He's now forced into the position, in my opinion, to now make those fights. Whereas before he could say, I'll tell you why. And I'm going to explain why these 3 fights happened and the David Benavidez fight didn't happen. He was forced into that position. Yeah, those fights didn't happen there. That fight against David Benavidez did not happen anywhere here between Canelo and Uzcategui, because he had a title. And he knew Canelo Alvarez needed that title. This is what I talked about last week, and I called everyone out about it. I called out Jamal Charlo about it, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders. I've said the same thing, and I said the same about Caleb Plant. Okay, all these guys protected their belt because they knew that's what Canelo Alvarez needed. And as long as he needed that, they were guaranteed they would get in the ring with Canelo Alvarez one day, and they would get that massive payday, which he did. He got 10 million for his fight against Canelo. That's why that fight didn't happen. But now he suddenly, oh yeah, I saw some guy saying that, oh, you know, Caleb Plant's a real one on social media. Okay, so if he was a real one, why didn't he make the David Benavidez fight here? When it came to any of these 3 fights, why was it these 3 opponents? Why wasn't it David Benavidez? That's my take on the whole situation. But now suddenly you ain't got the belt, you lost to Canelo, you're not really in the game anymore in terms of having a shot at Canelo. You've got nothing to offer Canelo now. So now you've heard Canelo's interview where he says, you guys need to mix it up because I'm busy this year. You can't just keep waiting for me to give you a payday, a big payday, the biggest payday of your career. So you guys are going to have to mix it up this year because I'm busy. I'm not available to 2023. Yeah. So that's the first thing I will point out. He does make another good point though about David Benavidez. I wasn't aware of this, but the David Benavidez versus David Lemieux fight is a final eliminator for the WBC title. So David Benavidez is also positioning himself into a position where he could get Canelo next. So it'll be interesting to see what David Benavidez does as well. Yeah. Because if David Benavidez beats Lemieux, which we all expect him to do, but let's say he does beat him, definitely. Okay. He goes on. What will be his next fight this year? It can't be Canelo because Canelo's busy. And if you are going to get the Canelo fight, it won't be till next year, May. Because Canelo fights on Cinco de Mayo weekends, which the first one of the year is May, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Will David Benavidez protect his position as Caleb Plant did when he had the IBF belt, waiting for that payday, that big bag, that shot against Canelo Alvarez? Because obviously at the same time, if he doesn't say, hey, I beat David Lemieux, I'm the WBC #1 contender or mandatory challenger to now Canelo, but guess what? I'm willing to put that up for grabs against Caleb Plant next. Let's go, let's do this. If we don't see that kind of energy next, then I'm going to be calling out David Benavidez on his bullshit as well. I'm telling you now. But as far as I'm concerned, Caleb Plant saying, hey, if I've got a fight, he just said here, if I've got to fight those guys to get my shot against Canelo, I was always planning to fight them, but if that's what I got to do, then I'm going to do it. Well, I'm not so convinced that's what you wanted to do. I'm sorry. You had 3 fights in between Uysk and Canelo, and you could have made that fight with David Benavidez anytime you wanted to, and you didn't. You didn't. He was calling you out. Okay, he was having all this back and forth with you. His father even made an inappropriate comment about your daughter who'd passed away, and condolences to Caleb Plant for his daughter, the loss of his daughter, etc. We all know that story, but his dad said something along the lines of that Caleb Plant needs to stop using his daughter as a narrative for his career, his boxing career, or something like that. He needs to get over it. Like, come on, which parent gets over the loss of a child? That was a low blow, in my opinion. And you didn't want to get in a ring and bust his son up for that? That wasn't motivation enough for you? Not knocking him, but there was a storyline there. You could have made that fight, made a big noise out of it, won the fight, and then gone on to fight Canelo, but you chose not to. There was a lot of things that were being said that were negative, were inappropriate from Team Benavidez as a whole, mainly his dad and Benavidez himself, which were not right. And no, you still didn't want it, but now you're saying you want that fight. You're a real one. You should have said, hey, forget Canelo, you and me, let's get in the ring. You made that comment, I'm going to bash your son up now. Let's do this, let's settle it. But we didn't see any of that. It was inappropriate and it was insensitive. Of course it was. It was wrong for them to say that. But at the same time, in my opinion, that would have fueled me to want to get that guy in the ring and smash his face in. Let alone you'd have to have 10 security guards at the weigh-in and at the press conferences in between us to keep me away from him. But I don't know. I'm not sold on Caleb Plant totally. That he is this person he projects himself to be, him personally. At the same time, we're going to see if same applies to David Benavidez. We're going to about to find out if David Benavidez, is he that same guy that he projects himself to be? Because if he beats Lemieux and he becomes a WBC mandatory challenger to Canelo Alvarez's 160-pound WBC belt, yeah, and then he says, he starts putting it off or making excuses or reasons as to why he can't fight anyone, and then waits till next May to have that shot if Canelo gives it to him, if he stays at 168, of course, that'll be interesting. Yeah, that'll be interesting, because if he does that, I'm going to call him out on that nonsense, I'm telling you now. But right now, I'm calling out Caleb Plant, because you had 3 fights in between Uysk and Canelo Alvarez, and at any point of those 3 fights, you could have made the David Benavidez fight, and you chose not to. So, and I was a bit surprised that Nestor Gibbs didn't put that on him, to be honest with you, because usually he's pretty good at that. But that's just my take on the whole situation. Like I always say, man, stop the nonsense, man. I just keep it real with all of you lot, yeah. And I don't care if you're a Benavidez fan or a Caleb Plant fan. I'm going to call these guys out. But we're about to find out if David Benavidez is a real one, because if he is, then he's going to say, okay, yeah, I'm the mandatory challenger now to Canelo Alvarez and his WBC belt at 168. But guess what? I'm not going to wait that long. Hey, the Plant, let's do this. Let's sign the contract. Let's get it on. Let's settle this once and for all. That's the energy I want to see. And the energy I want to see in return from Caleb Plant is, let's do this. But what I'm going to say, I don't know with Caleb Plant, man. He had 3 fights in between Uysk and Canelo. He could have made that David Benavidez fight. He chose not to. So we're going to see now whether he'll do it now, this time around. Let's see if he's a man of his word. All right, let's move on from this anyway. But here we go. Look, let's talk some welterweight action now, right? So Danny Garcia, listen, I like Danny Garcia. I've never had a real issue with him. Yeah, I've always thought he's a good fighter. He was definitely, he was brilliant at 140 in my opinion. He's not done much at welterweight. His biggest losses have come to, I believe, is it Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr. Who else did he lose to? Did he lose to Sean Porter as well? He lost to Sean Porter as well. I think he did. He's not really done anything else in the welterweight division. His biggest win is Robert Guerrero, right? I think. But he's not probably made a big noise at welterweight like he did at 140. And obviously moving up in weight and going into a premier division, as I like to call it, the welterweight division, the talent pool is stronger and these are tougher guys. But Danny's always put on a good show and given a good account of himself. And I got a lot of time for Danny Garcia. Okay, but he says here, Danny Garcia on fighting Jaron Ennis, he has his own journey and I have mine. Jaron Ennis at the moment is calling everyone out. He's calling out Keith Thurman, etc., and Errol Spence Jr. They're all saying the same thing, like, no one's ducking no one. You've got your own journey, we've got our own, or in time we'll meet and all that sort of stuff, right? Okay, but then this was also put out there by Danny Garcia. So he said this then, right, about Crawford. Me and Terence Crawford is a big fight. We have history. I feel like he needs somebody like me. Danny Garcia on Bud Crawford. I think that was on Fight Hub, right? Here's my take, yeah? What has Danny Garcia done at welterweight to deserve this shot? He lost to Thurman, lost to Porter, lost to Errol Spence Jr. What has he done to earn this shot against Terence Crawford? Now, I'm going to talk about another bit. Keith Thurman, after seeing Sean Porter get beaten by Terence Crawford, he said he was willing to fight Crawford next, right? He said, let me have a tune-up fight. Let me get my get back, as he calls it. Keith Thurman, I do like Keith Thurman because he talks a lot of smack. He's entertaining, right? But he turned around and said that he would fight Terence Crawford next after a tune-up. I think he said about July this year or something like that. I've not heard anything out of Terence Crawford, nor have I heard negotiations. Apparently now, there's rumours that Terence Crawford might sign with PBC for a fight to fight Danny Garcia next. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about. This is why I don't believe that Errol Spence Jr., the winner of Errol Spence Jr. or Ugas, is going to fight Terence Crawford next. I think the winner of that fight might go on to fight Keith Thurman next. And at the same time, they're using Danny Garcia to keep Terence Crawford busy and keep him at bay. So the fans don't put on this sort of pressure. They're trying to play a game here, in my opinion. All right, I think Al Haymon's playing a game here. I don't believe Terence Crawford is going to commit himself to a long-term contract with a PBC. He's probably going to want to try and keep himself as a free agent so he doesn't have these problems he's been having for the last few years to try and make the Errol Spence Jr. fight. But I thought this was interesting that Danny's come out of nowhere and he decided to have that fight. Now Danny's he has been training. I've seen him been doing a bit of training, not hardcore training, but from what I understand from his interviews, a lot of his previous interviews in the last few months, he's been talking about going up to 154 and he's been talking about bulking up. So is he really going to come back down to 147 pounds to fight Terence Crawford? I don't know. Maybe he will if the paycheck's big enough. And we know those PBC fighters make money, right? Al Haymon does pay his top fighters good money. There's no doubt about that. We know that. Okay, and then we've never heard these sort of problems where fighters complain about their paychecks. But I just think, I feel like this is a chess game, man. I feel like, hey, let's keep Terence Crawford shut. Let's keep him quiet for a bit. Let's feed him Danny Garcia, and I think Terence wins that fight personally. And meanwhile, while we were feeding Danny to Terence Crawford, the winner of Spence Ugas, we'll give that to Keith Thurman, or we will do a rematch. Maybe if Errol Spence Jr. loses that fight, maybe there'll be a rematch, right? And then we'll make the Keith Thurman fight. I don't know. I'm just not convinced. I feel like there's still boxing politics going on here when it comes to this whole situation of Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. I feel they're going to prolong this as long as they can. I'm not confident that we're going to see that fight next if Spence beats Ugas, for example. I'm just not confident, despite what Errol Spence Jr. has been saying, and this is what he's been saying. I'm hopeful that Terence Crawford and I can happen. Yeah, I feel like it would be the biggest fight in sports. It's for the undisputed crown. I think that's a huge fight, especially with us in our prime. I'm hoping that can happen. So, that's what Terence Crawford is putting out there. He's getting boxing fans hopes up that, this fight is finally going to happen. Call me a skeptic as much as you want. I'm just trying to be realistic with all of this. You know, I've been watching this sport for so long, especially in the last few years, where the politics and the business side of it just got worse and worse and worse. I miss the Don King era. A lot of people think Don King was a scumbag, and he was, no doubt about it, but which promoter isn't, let's be honest. But at least he had full control there enough of the sport of boxing, and he controlled all the top fighters, and he can make those fights, kind of like what Dana White does on UFC. So, you know, and I feel like I'm not convinced that that fight's going to happen next if Spence wins. That's just my personal opinion. And definitely, I think it definitely won't happen if Ugas wins. I think Ugas will be put in there with someone like Keith Thurman, if there's not a rematch between Ugas and Spence. Did you get what I mean? I'm just not convinced at all. You know, so I don't believe that that fight's going to happen next. I've been saying this for weeks now, and I'm still going to say it. And the signs for me, the way I'm reading it, the signs, and this is just my personal opinion from what I'm seeing, the signs that I'm reading is that we will not see Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. next, should Errol Spence Jr. win that fight. That's just the way I'm going. And if I'm wrong, I would love to be wrong, and I will come back on my channel, of course, and I will say I was totally wrong. Thank God for that. But I'm not buying. I've got nothing against any of these guys. I love the welterweight division. The welterweight division is my favorite division. But you know what? The best fight in that division right now is Spence versus Terence Crawford, but I just don't believe we're going to see it. Okay, so let's talk about some of these British welterweights. All right, so here we go. Kell Brook wants 10 million to face Conor Benn. Apparently that fight's not going to happen now because of the fact that Brook has just priced himself out. I get it. Brook's at the end of his career, so he wants to make as much money as he possibly can. And you know what? There's a lot of talk about him fighting so-and-so and so-and-so. Conor Benn is one of the names. Chris Eubank Jr. is another name, but Eubank has said that that fight needs to happen at 160. I'm not coming down to 154, so I don't know how that's going to go. I've not been following that whole situation. If they announce it, they announce it. I'm not going to keep going into the depths of that, right? Rumors of, you know, some people are saying, hey, how about him against Brook against the likes of a Keith Thurman or a Danny Garcia? I think those are pretty good fights. Why not? You know, I'm sure he'll get paid well to cross the pond to make those fights. But again, you know, that depends on Brook. You know, if he's asking for 10 million, then he's not going to get that. He's not going to get that kind of money against even Danny Garcia or Keith Thurman. But to me, that's a way of pricing yourself out. Like, be a bit more reasonable, say 4 or 5 million. Maybe that's more doable. But I don't see Eddie Hearn paying you 10 million to face Conor Benn. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, and maybe that's Brook's way of saying, hey, look, I don't really want to fight this young, up-and-coming, hard-hitting guy who's full of energy. You know, give me someone else. Do you know what I mean? And that might be the case here. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not saying it is, but it could be, right? But it just feels like he's priced himself out a little bit. There's no way he's going to get that kind of money to fight Conor Benn, and Eddie Hearn's not going to put that money up. I'll be really shocked if he does. I don't see it happening. And we've seen plenty of interviews. I've linked one, I think, in the description of the video of Conor Benn talking about this. It's silly money. I think he referred it to as, and he's right. It's silly money for that fight. There's no way you're getting paid 10 million for that. You're not even holding a belt, for crying right loud. Your last fight was against Amir Khan. Shot up Amir Khan, let's be honest. Even though he put on a good show and it was an entertaining fight, Amir Khan was done, clear as day. You know? And I saw that way back that from the Terence Crawford fight that Amir Khan was done. And we saw Brook got beat before that against, you know, in a few rounds by Terence Crawford as well. So just because you beat Amir Khan, you can't start going around demanding 10 million, in my opinion. I think that's ridiculous. But again, Brook, either he's looking to, you know, secure his retirement fund, or he's looking to price himself out because he doesn't really want the fight against Conor Benn. It's one or the other, but I'll let you guys decide that one. Now let's go back to Errol Spence Jr. We've had Victor Conte recently coming out being very loud over Twitter, where he's questioning the VADA testing for Spence versus Ugas, in particular to Spence. I've got a whole load of tweets up here that's going to run across the page. I am not going to read all this stuff, right? Okay, you can pause and read it for yourselves if you want. I'm not going to go into the depths of it, right? But he's basically, Victor Conte is basically putting out there that, you know, why won't Spence or even Ugas talk about their drug testing for the fight when asked about it, etc., and all this sort of stuff. So he's kind of putting out there that, you know, there's something fishy going on here, you know, that these guys are not adhering to drug testing properly or VADA testing properly. You know, VADA, I think he even mentioned something about VADA tests. VADA usually on Twitter will put out there when fighters have signed up for VADA testing, and they'll say their VADA testing has begun. And then when it finishes, they say congratulations to both fighters. I've seen them do it many times. Congratulations to both fighters. They have now completed their full VADA testing, blah, blah, blah. And both fighters were negative all the way through, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. But Victor Conte is like kind of putting on a little bit of pressure out there and saying, hey, something's not right here. Something's not right here. Now, listen, when it comes to Victor Conte, and you'll see this bit on the screen right now where Errol Spence Jr. has kind of replied to him. Okay. With Victor Conte, yeah, I listen to Victor Conte a lot when guys failed drug tests, because Victor Conte is an expert in helping athletes cheat drug tests. He's an expert in helping people how to cheat. So here's my take on Victor Conte and his comments, right? What is Victor Conte doing, or who does he think he really is, going around questioning whether fighters have signed up to VADA testing or are, you know, partaking in VADA testing? Who are they? Who is he? He's a former cheat who helped many athletes, yeah, not just boxers, but many other athletes cheat by taking PEDs and helping them not to get caught. But yet this guy feels like he can now be the kind of like the judge or whatever, judge, jury and executioner of fighters, and saying, hey, how come he's not, you know, talking about his VADA testing? How come, you know, VADA hasn't put a tweet out about him, and blah, 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 blah. Who the hell are you to do that? Yeah, don't get me wrong. If that is the case, that's true. But like, that's the wrong person to go out there and start criticizing fighters, considering he's well known for supporting athletes and helping them cheat by using PEDs, right? But then Keith Idec of BoxingScene.com put this tweet out. He turned around and said this: afraid, this guy, here on planet Earth, I have a copy of a letter dated the 2nd 17th, right? That states, Spence and Ugas are actively participating in VADA testing. This would have been a Boxing Scene story only if they were not enrolled and testing regularly. So basically what he was asking, is you can see at the bottom what Victor Conte was saying, you know, why are not the press and the media pressing these two fighters about talking about their VADA testing and stuff like that? But here's the take, like, where did Keith Idec get that letter from? Like, where did he get that letter from? Was it put up on Twitter? Did I miss something? If I did, guys, put it in the comment section and put the link in the comment section as well. I'd love to see it. Right, but how's he got a letter for that? He's just a reporter. Those letters generally go to the fighters and their promoters, etc., and their managers and their trainers and stuff like that. They don't go to the press. Here you go, press members. Here's the proof that, you know, these guys are involved in drug testing. I'm not saying that there's something like fishy going on, whatever it is, but yeah, there might be something weird going on here. There might not be something weird going on here. How the hell do I know? I'm just a boxing fan, yeah, commentating on the sport. But I think Victor Conte is the last person to be questioning, in my opinion, fighters or whether they're enrolled in VADA testing or not, considering he's played a massive part in helping a lot of fighters and athletes over the years cheat the system and get away with using PEDs. That's just my take. As for, you know, Errol Spence, whether he's in it or not, he obviously reacted because you saw that tweet he put out there. Like, hey, I've been enrolled in VADA testing since the KELL Brook fight, so shut your mouth. There's my response. End of. Look, I don't know what the ins and outs of it all are. If he's not enrolled in VADA testing, for me, or even Ugas, that is suspicious. But again, a lot of this stuff goes on the sport, and sometimes these fighters do get caught, and we never ever hear about it because obviously some of these top names, they don't want them to be exposed or their careers to be harmed because there's big money involved. You know, it happens. Look at Dillian White. Look at Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez got a 6-month retroactive ban. So his ban was backdated to the day he got tested, which means to ensure that the fight happened in September against Triple G, the second one, the rematch, to ensure that the fight still happened on time and the date that they originally set, they backdated the ban. So actually he only had a 4-month ban. Yeah, look at Dillian White. Where was the B sample? You know? Billy Joe Saunders was the same. He got away with it, I think, didn't he? Didn't get a ban for his little nose spray that apparently helped him test positive. Yeah, right, whatever. You know, this goes on in the sport, but I don't think Victor Conte is the one that should be going around pointing fingers, man. He's got enough dirt on his hands as it is. And last but not least, more news about Jaime Munguia. Rumours that Jaime Munguia versus Daniel Jacobs is in the works. Interesting. Now, remember, we talked about this other week where, you know, the negotiations between Jaime Munguia and Jamal Charlo broke down because obviously Showtime wanted it all. He was the A side, so actually they wanted all of it on their pay-per-view. But Oscar De La Hoya pulled out of it because before Jaime Munguia out of that negotiation because obviously he needed to appease his masters at DAZN, and that wasn't going to go down well because they helped build it, and they basically said, we want a slice of that pie as well, please. And obviously negotiations fell down, and he was pulled out of his final eliminator fight, which would have made him the mandatory challenger to Jamal Charlo, you know, which I'm guessing they weren't confident they were going to win the purse bid on because that's the way it would have gone, and pulled him out of that fight as well. So naturally, the next best thing to do is we want to give Jaime Munguia a name now on his record, and it's true that's the next step for Jaime Munguia. And they've now looking like they're going to pick out Daniel Jacobs out of the hat. That's the rabbit they're going to be pulling out of the hat for Jaime Munguia. But that fight's easier to make because obviously we know where Daniel Jacobs fights. He fights on DAZN and he's under Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, so it's an easier fight to make. There's no business getting in the way of that fight. And this is another clear example, guys. I keep talking about it week in, week out. Stop being tribal. Stop supporting your favorite fighters in the way you do, and supporting promoters, because in this new age of boxing fans support promoters and broadcasters, and I don't get all this nonsense, right? And they're emotionally attached to their favorite fighters at the same time, and they protect the whole team, not just the fighter anymore. But this is another clear example of that narrative that I'm pushing at the moment, and it's not just a narrative, it's the truth, really, you know, that I'm pushing at the moment, that, you know, the real problem in the sport isn't the fighters, it's the promoters, the managers, and the broadcasters, the businessmen of the sport. They're the biggest problems. They're the reason why big fights don't happen a lot of the times. You put I've always been saying this, if you put two fighters in a room and give them, come up with a contract, they would probably do it. But obviously they don't have the business knowledge. They all act like they're businessmen, but they're not. They need businessmen to do that sort of work for them because, you know, they ain't got the business IQ to do that. Let's be real, right? Okay, that's the way I see it. But look, it's still a good fight if it happens. I would like to see that fight. I think it'll be a good step up for Jaime Munguia. And it'd be a good fight for Daniel Jacobs, you know, who a lot of people believe, you know, was robbed against John Ryder out in here in London. Was it in London or was it up north? Can't remember. But he was robbed out here in the UK, a lot of people believed. I didn't watch the fight properly. It was on the TV, but I was kind of jumping in and out. I wasn't watching round by Ryan, so I can't really say whether Jacobs was robbed or not. But it got exciting in the second half, that's for sure, of the fight, because it was pretty dull and boring in the first few rounds. And I think those were the rounds that Jacobs was probably winning and dominating, to be honest with you. But yeah, look, good comeback fight for Daniel Jacobs. Sure, we'll get paid well for that. And obviously, it's a good step up for Jaime Munguia still. But, you know, this is what I'm talking about, guys. Stop it. You need to stop the nonsense. Stop supporting your favourite promoter and your favourite broadcaster, because these are the guys that are hurting the sport and preventing big fights from happening. All right? Listen, that's all I got for you guys this week. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Cypherbox reminding you to keep it real.
I was gonna rip his heart out, I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me. Lex is a conqueror, no, I'm Alexander, he's no Alexander. I'm the best ever, there's never been anybody ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from their claw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I wanna eat his children. Praise be to Allah.